Good morning and welcome to our Zoom with the Greater Vancouver Zoo. I'm Haley from Learn Fort Langley, and we are here with Kat and Riley at the zoo. So Kat and Riley, take it away.
Oh, good morning, boys and girls. Thank you for joining our Zoom chat this morning. So I do have a special treat for you guys today. So we do have our zookeeper present, and I'm just going to introduce you. I'm going to flip the camera over. We have Ashley here. And we also have Kiwi, our green iguana. So that's another animal that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go over some fun facts about Kiwi. And I also have a few artifacts to show you what we have for our green iguana as well. And we're going to have our zookeeper talk a little bit about Kiwi here and some fun facts. So we're just going to turn it over to her as I move this up. Skip. There you go.
Hi, so my name is Ashley and this is Kiwi. He is my green iguana. Now Kiwi here is a full-grown green iguana, but he is not as large as iguanas can get. They can get up to 6.5 feet long. Now you can't really tell because his tail is tucked all the way behind me back there, but he is about 5 feet long. And Kiwi is about 18 years old. Now, Kiwi is a lizard. He is one of the larger lizards out there. Definitely not the largest, but they are actually herbivores. Now, that's a big fancy word. That means that they only eat plants. And Kiwi here, he's an amazing climber. These guys will spend most of their times up in the trees, climbing around, and they're actually fantastic jumpers as well as swimmers. Sometimes if they feel threatened by a predator, they'll actually throw themselves right off of whatever branch that they're standing on, and they can fall up to 40 feet and land on solid ground and survive without any issue. So they are pretty amazing creatures. Now, if you want to take this back, I'm going to put him on his perch.
Perfect. Now, these guys are also herbivores, so they eat lots of leafy greens. And what would you say, Ashley, is Kiwi's favorite food?
One of Kiwi's favorite foods is we give him squash.
Ooh, squash. That's really
so
good.
We cook some squash for him and you give him a bit of squash. And so that's what we put all his vitamins in, because we can almost guarantee that he'll eat that every day.
Perfect. And what do you think their predators would be out in the wild?
Now, these guys are found in South America, up as high as Mexico. So they're going to be coming across maybe something like a jaguar would be something they'd be afraid of, and as well as maybe some really large birds of prey.
Very cool. Now, what we also know about Kiwi here, as Ashley was saying, if I go over here just to give you a good look at that tail. Now, they can detach their tail. So it's really cool what we were talking about. Last week we had, I believe a couple weeks ago, our leopard gecko, Barnabas. So green iguanas can also detach their tail just like a leopard gecko. So if a predator does latch onto them, they can detach the tail and it lets them escape, while that tail is more of a prank for the predator. They will be attacking the tail more so than going after this green iguana.
And that will give Kiwi enough time that he could escape.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And actually what happens is that if he does lose his tail, he can actually grow it back. So he actually did lose the very tip of his tail. And when they grow it back, it doesn't grow back quite the same. So if you see here, right here at the end, it's a little bit black there. So just the little tip here, that's actually regrown tail. So that's a brand new tail that he grew back. And they can do that with their entire tail if they need to.
Very cool. Now, these guys are reptiles, so they do lay eggs, and they lay about 65 eggs in one nest. Yeah,
Pretty impressive.
it's very impressive. And I always get asked, what are the size of the eggs? What do they look like? And we have here as an artifact, actually real eggs of an iguana. So that's how big these eggs are gonna look. Mm-hmm. Now, these guys do also shed too. Oop, as I drop that. And here is their shedding, because they are also, thank you, because they are reptiles, so they do shed their skin too. It's just no different than ours, but we don't see it as much when we flake off our skin. So he would shed this if he had any type of bug bite, any wound, or just typical dry skin. So that's what that looks like. And they all shed differently. These guys shed in chunks, so it's going to be a little bit different than a snake shed. Yeah. What about his claws? I'm looking at some pretty long claws here this guy has. Now he uses those claws to grip onto surfaces like here, his big tree branch here. They're excellent climbers, so they can go way up in the tree. And even though they look kind of weird, they are great swimmers. So it helps them go into the water. They'll launch themselves into the water to get away from predators. And that's a good way for them to swim. They do run very funny, but they are very, very fast and really fast swimmers. Oh, right. Now, what's really cool about Kiwi here, or all green iguanas, they have what's called, quote unquote, a third eye. And I'm going to have our zookeeper tell you a little bit more about that third eye as she is pointing.
So this little bump you see in here, you might see it's a little bit discolored. It's called their third eye. And what this does, it actually allows them to sense any light change. So he can sense that I'm going over his head here. So now he knows it's dark, and now he can sense that it's light. Now scientists actually don't really know what the actual purpose of this could be. It could be because then he can tell if he's in a cold spot, because he might need to move into the sun in order to warm himself up. Or it might tell him if a predator is flying by, if like a big, big bird. These are kind of the theories, though. We're not 100% sure. Now, the reason why sitting in the sunlight would be so important for him is because these guys are cold-blooded. Now, this doesn't mean that their blood is cold, but what it actually means is that they have to use the sun to warm themselves up. So you or me, if we get really cold, what we're going to do is we're going to put on a sweater, maybe wrap ourselves in a blanket, and our body will make lots of heat and warm us up. Kiwi doesn't have this option. If he was out in the cold and you put a sweater on him, he's going to stay just as cold. It actually doesn't help at all. So what he needs to do if he's getting really cold is he's got to find a warm rock to sit on or some little patch of sunlight to sit in, and that's going to help him to warm up. So here at the zoo, because we do live in Canada and we do get pretty cold in the wintertime, he does live in our vivarium. And he always has his heat lamps, and it's always kept nice and warm for him in his enclosure.
Perfect. All right, everyone. So now's the time for any questions that you have for either me or our zookeeper. Do you want to start asking?
All right, so put up your hand if you have a question. If your camera isn't on, you can write it in the chat box and we can get your questions from there as well. So let's see if anyone has a question. Rory has a question. Rory.
How old can they live?
Iguanas can live up to 20 years in captivity. Now, Kiwi here is 18, so he is an old man, but he is very healthy. And the fact that he's 18 and has almost his entire tail still is pretty amazing.
All right. Austin, what's your question?
How long can they grow?
They can grow up to 6.5 feet long. So I'm only about 5.5 feet tall. So some iguanas can actually get even longer than I am tall. So probably almost as tall as maybe your guys' dad, if you've got a pretty tall dad.
Oh, wow, that's pretty tall.
Yeah.
They can also weigh approximately 11 pounds too. We don't know if Kiwi specifically weighs 11 pounds, but most green iguanas can get about 11 pounds.
Awesome. So the next question is coming from, the screen name says Laura.
How long does it take to grow the tip of the tail back?
It depends on how much of their tail they lost. So Kiwi here, he didn't lose very much, so that probably only took him about 3, maybe 4 months to grow back. But if they were to lose, let's say, their entire tail, it might take them as long as a couple years to grow it all the way back.
Isla, what's your question?
Where in the world would you find them?
They are found in places like Mexico and South America, so areas like Brazil. So they're going to be kind of like at the end of North America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you also can find them in some resorts in Mexico too. I know, like when I've traveled around the Caribbean, I've seen these guys running around the resort, kind of terrifying. But if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone too. So they're not that dangerous, but still don't go petting a wild iguana. I don't recommend it.
Austin, what is your question, Austin?
The ospreys harpy eagles one of their predators?
Harp eagles?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They potentially would be if they're going around that area. I believe they do migrate down there. That is an excellent question. I don't know for sure, but if they are in the area, they probably would be one of the animals that iguanas would be nervous around.
Mm-hmm.
Grayson, do you have a question, bud?
I went to Mexico and I saw lizard at the kids club.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool animals, and some of the wild ones are pretty big. Kiwi's probably not as big as the one that you would have seen in Mexico.
Very cool. So boys and girls, does anyone else have a question for us? Oh, I see in the chat box, Sophia has written their question. It says, how long is their tail?
Well, that'll depend on which iguana we're talking about. So Kiwi here, his tail is longer than his entire body. So it's a little longer than his entire, than half of his length. So I would say his tail is probably around 2.5 feet long, and they can get as long as almost 3.5 feet.
It's pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty long.
So I don't see many more people with their hands up. I wonder, Kat and Ashley, if you can tell us maybe some more about the iguana and their habitat and those sorts of things.
Okay. Any other facts?
Well, what you may not know about Kiwi is that he was actually someone's pet before he came here. So someone did get him as a pet. They thought, oh, an iguana would be an amazing animal to have as a pet. When they're really small, when they're babies, they look like a lot of fun. But iguanas are a lot of work. And they're actually not usually very friendly. Kiwi was actually not very friendly for the first, I think, about 10 years we had him. You couldn't pet him the way you can now. He's really warmed up to us because we've been working with him a lot. So even though he may seem like a really cool pet, iguanas are really hard to take care of. They're definitely not the first reptile you ever want to have.
No. Maybe stick with a leopard gecko.
Yeah, the geckos are really good. If any of you guys are really interested in having a reptile, maybe a small gecko, you got to make sure you do your research. I don't recommend an iguana, though. They're a lot of work.
And they get pretty big and pretty heavy. And they've got razor sharp claws, too. So actually, our keeper's going to show you when she picks up Kiwi, she has to wear these big gloves because she doesn't want her skin to get scratched up.
So I've got these two great big gloves, and they go quite a ways down my arm, and this is what I'm going to use when I'm holding him. Because even though me and Kiwi have a really good relationship, when he's holding on to things, he doesn't necessarily know that he might scratch me.
Mm-hmm. Now, what else is his favorite treat? Well, I know he likes dandelions. So he loves to eat dandelions, doesn't he?
Yep. Flowers. He also likes bell peppers, as well as, what do we give him sometimes? We'll give him some blueberries every now and then. He loves his fruits and veggies, as well as his greens. Mm-hmm. And dandelion leaves are actually one of his favorites as well.
Dandelion leaves. And every time that Ashley here is cleaning out his enclosure, she gives him a bath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Kiwi likes baths.
They come from South America. And one of the other things you may not know about them is that they need a very humid environment. Now, what this means is that, if you've ever been in an area, if you've ever traveled where the air seems really thick, it's almost like foggy in a way, that's kind of what he needs. So we mist him every single day. So he gets misted down with a hose. He loves it. And it's also actually the way that they drink. So these guys don't drink like normal animals would. They don't stick their mouths into a bowl or lick it up. They actually wait for water to drip on their mouth or down their face and into their mouth. And they'll actually drink right from as water gathers along this edge here. It actually makes a little plateau. I don't know if you can actually see that from this angle, but it's angled just perfectly that he's going to catch all that water right along his mouth here.
did see pretty good right there.
Yeah, I think you can actually.
And what else I'm noticing here is, what about the tops? So these are a type of scale, is it not?
Yeah, this is a type of scale, and he actually will shed the outside of those. It's really interesting when he sheds, if he sheds a big portion on his back, all of these points up here, a big piece of shed will come right off of them. It's really interesting. I don't have an example right now. And what these are for is that they are for decoration, mostly they believe, and they also think that if a predator were to come and try and grab him, that might not feel so good, right? So if you're gentle with him, these actually don't hurt at all. But if you come at them straight down like this, they kind of poke a little. So you can imagine if something was to grab him or try to bite him, they'd probably hurt themselves.
Very cool. Does anyone have any new questions about that, what we just discussed?
Boys and girls, we have a couple more minutes for questions. If you do have any questions about the green iguana, or even any questions about the zoo in general or animals in general, these are two very intelligent people who can tell us lots. Adrian, do you have a question, or are your hands just waving beside your face? Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your question, bud?
Oh, we have a kitty and he weighs like 20 pounds or 40, 30.
So Austin was saying that he has a kitty and he weighs like 20 pounds or 30, 40.
Wow, that's a pretty big kitty cat. That's
That
probably
is.
double the weight of Kiwi here. That's pretty impressive.
That face.
I think we have time for one more question. Lacey, do you have any questions for us today? You're usually good for questions. None today, hey?
Yeah. We do have two giraffes at the zoo, Pompey and Jenga, and they are two Rothschild giraffes. So that's the type of species of giraffe they are, and they are half brothers. So we do have giraffes. And also I saw a comment, like a question about what are the circles on Kiwi's face, on his jowls?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So this is part of his camouflage. So what he does to actually trick other animals in the wild. Now, in the wild, when you see a big circle, usually other animals will think that that's an eye. So you can't really see it because he's really comfy. He's kind of nestled in here. But if he was way up in a tree and an animal just saw this, they're going to think that that's its eye. Now you can see his eye is actually a lot smaller than that. So when they see this, they're going to see that huge eye. They're going to think, wow, that is a really big animal. I'm not going to mess with that. So it helps him to protect himself by tricking other animals to think that he's bigger than he is.
Awesome.
That
So
is
Kai
cool.
and Rain are wondering if their skin feels similar to snake skin.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Actually, his skin feels a lot different than a snake. It's a lot more rough. Yeah, a lot more scaly rough.
A lot of people, what they describe to me is it almost feels like touching a whole bunch of little pebbles. Like his skin almost feels like rocks. It's pretty interesting. And snake skin, actually, even from different types of snakes, will actually feel a lot different. So the Western hognoses we have, which are more of a burrowing snake, their scales are going to be a lot rougher than, let's say, a ball python, which is going to live up in the trees, and their scales are a lot smoother.
Yeah. So each different reptile has different type of skins because of their environment. So like Ashley was saying, ball pythons will be up in the tree more and they're a little more smoother. And our Western hognose will be down deeper with tougher skin at the bottom because they are burrows. So they live in rocky, deserty kind of environments. So they're going to need tougher scales to crawl underneath and burrow. Just like Kiwi. Thank you.
Awesome. So last chance for question, boys and girls. If anyone has a question.
We hear when it's time for him to find a girlfriend, he will turn this really nice orange colored, almost like a sunset, I would describe it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's when the keepers know, or if I'm requesting Kiwi to come out like I did today, we don't want to touch him so much because he's going to be very more like territorial. He'll be a little bit more aggressive because he's wanting to find a girlfriend, right?
And even though these guys are herbivores and they do eat plants, they actually do have rows of razor sharp teeth on both sides of their jaw. So we don't really want to be messing with him when he's going to be aggressive or if he's annoyed. But as you can see today, he's in a very good mood for this.
Very good mood.
All right. So we have Austin has one last question.
Sure.
Austin, what's your question?
Do they live in the Amazon?
In the Amazon, yeah, they would. That's a very good guess. That is exactly.
So let us say thank you to Kat and Ashley for being here with us today, and then I will turn a song on, and they can just keep the video on Kiwi, and we can watch them just for a little bit while we listen to our closing song. So let's say thank you very much to Kat and Ashley, and then where are you guys? Let's spotlight your video so we can watch the iguana. So boys and girls, thank you so much for coming. We will see you.
Thank you.
Again on
This one's a
Thursday with the
touch screen.
zoo,
Do I move that?
and at our other Zooms as well this week. So thank you very much, Kat and Ashley. We will see you later.
Sounds good.
You're
Bye.
very welcome.